Hi, my name's Odessa. I wore the uniform, served my country, and still came home to find I'd been erased from my own family's story. They gave my brother my memories. They gave him my words. They gave him me. At a family event meant to celebrate him, I sat at the back, cropped out of photos, and watched him tell my story, as if I never existed. But that wasn't the worst part. What do you do when your own blood lies about you, deletes you, and then dares to ask why you're so quiet? What would you do? If the people who raised you were the same ones who tried to bury you, would you stay silent or would you fight back? Let me tell you what I did. I wasn't supposed to feel like a stranger here. The spring air in Charleston had that soft, syrupy sweetness I remembered from childhood, jasmine and magnolia, and yet it did nothing to calm my stomach as I stepped out of the rental car. The parking lot was already half full, with polished SUVs and sedans shining under the afternoon sun, all pointed toward the event hall where my brother Grady's commendation ceremony was underway. I adjusted the stiff collar of my dress uniform, brushed a speck of lint off the shoulder, and took a deep breath. Even now, after years in the military, walking into a room full of my own family felt more daunting than any war zone. My heels clicked across the pavement with practiced confidence, but inside, every step felt like trespassing. I hadn't seen my parents in nearly 3 years. My siblings, longer, except for Grady. He'd always been the golden boy, the one who stayed, who built a life in the South, who gave my mother her first grandchild and my father someone to brag about at the diner. I was the one who left, first for college, then for the army, then for things even harder to explain. The young man at the venue entrance, barely old enough to shave, stopped me before I could step inside. His eyes scanned a list on his clipboard without ever meeting mine. Name? Odessa Hargrove, I said, offering a polite nod. I'm here for my brother's award ceremony. He frowned, checked again, then shook his head. Sorry, ma'am. You're not on the VIP list. Of course I wasn't. I have an invitation, I replied, keeping my voice level as I pulled the crisp envelope from my breast pocket. He took it with uncertainty, scanning the embossed lettering like it might reveal a trick. Only when he saw the signature at the bottom, Grady's signature, did he reluctantly step aside and motion me in. Sorry about that, ma'am. Don't worry, I said, sliding the envelope back into my pocket. I'm used to being overlooked. The lobby smelled of fresh flowers and furniture polish. Strings of soft classical music drifted from the ballroom where the event was in full swing. I could hear clapping, laughter, someone speaking into a microphone. A woman in black slacks and a headset approached me, glanced at my uniform, and gave a tight smile. You must be Grady's sister, she said. This way, please. She led me past the central aisle, past the round tables draped in linen and adorned with hydrangea centerpieces, past the family table near the front where my parents sat beside Grady and his wife. Instead, she seated me at a small table near the back, half hidden behind a decorative column. The place cards bore no names. The seat next to me was empty. From where I sat, I could see the stage but not the faces of my own family. Grady was on the podium now, speaking with his usual ease, a smile fixed in place like he was born to be applauded. I reached for the program on the table. My name was nowhere inside. It stung more than I expected. I had known better. I had trained myself to expect little from home, but it still felt like a fresh bruise. The kind you don't notice until someone pokes it. I scanned the room and spotted the display board near the entry. It featured a timeline of Grady's achievements, school photos, military awards, family gatherings. There were snapshots of us as children, beach vacations, birthdays, but in every picture that should have included me, I had either been cropped out or replaced, like I'd never existed. A quiet heat bloomed in my chest. Not rage, no, not yet, just the slow, acidic realization that I had been erased, deliberately. This wasn't an oversight, it was a decision. I turned away and closed my eyes. It wasn't just the photos. I remembered now, wiring money from Kuwait for the deposit on this very hall when Grady's wife told me the family was short on cash. I had done it without a second thought. Grady promised he'd mention it, He didn't. Someone clinked a glass near me. I opened my eyes and saw a distant cousin whispering something to his wife. She glanced my way and quickly looked away, like I was a stain on the linen. I stared at the condensation dripping down my untouched water glass. They all remembered me when they needed something. Someone to vouch for a mortgage, someone to call during a health scare, someone to send care packages overseas. But now, seated at the edge of a celebration I helped build, I had become invisible. I listened to the applause that followed Grady's closing words. He looked toward the family table, nodded at our parents, kissed his wife on the cheek, lifted his daughter in one arm. The crowd cheered. No one looked my way. I leaned forward, whispered to myself, maybe it's time they saw who I've become. Because I didn't wear this uniform just for show. I didn't wear this uniform just for show. The fabric on my shoulders felt heavier than it should as I stood near the double doors of the event hall, the crowd buzzing with anticipation. I adjusted the seams, a subconscious act of armor tightening. The hum of polite conversations, clinking glasses, and polished laughter didn't reach my core. I scanned the room once more. My father caught sight of me across the floor. His face didn't register much, just a nod, then he turned back to shake hands with the senator like I wasn't even there. The senator, a stiff-jawed man with too perfect hair and a rehearsed smile, took the microphone. "Let's welcome the real hero of the hour," he announced. Grady Mitchell. Applause. Standing ovation. My palms stayed still against the silk of my uniform pants. Grady walked up with that effortless confidence he'd always had. The kind that made you forget to ask questions. The kind that made people believe every word that left his mouth. Our parents followed close behind, beaming, arms draped around each other's backs like the postcard perfect couple they wanted the world to believe they were. "My brother is a pillar," the senator continued. "But as we know, no man becomes great without a strong foundation. And that foundation is family." I felt that twist in my gut before the words even landed. Grady cleared his throat, stepping forward. "I remember once, as a kid, I was too scared to climb the rope in gym class. But I heard this voice, loud and proud, yelling from the sidelines, 'You've got this, G-Man!' I climbed. I made it to the top. That voice gave me courage. Laughter rippled through the crowd. That voice had been mine. I remembered the day vividly. He'd cried behind the locker rows for nearly 10 minutes until I snuck in, wiped his face with my sleeve, and dared him to beat my time. But up there, he was selling it like it had been his dad, and the room bought it. The applause felt like slaps. I pressed my lips together and smiled thinly. A woman next to me, maybe a friend of the family, nudged me and whispered, "Your brother sure knows how to tell a story." Yes, he did. Then came the slideshow. Pictures flicked by, Grady in a Boy Scout's uniform, Grady at prom, Grady at West Point, Grady cutting the ribbon at the family hardware store after Dad handed over the keys. Then a slide paused longer than most. A scan of a letter, old and creased, my handwriting unmistakable even from this distance. "You were born to lead," it said. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I believe in you." I wrote that from a tent in Kandahar, under blackout conditions, using a pen that barely worked. I sealed it with a fingerprint smudge of dirt and blood. My blood. They didn't say it was mine. The senator read it aloud and said, "A letter from his parents, sent during his early struggles," and the room sighed, warm with affection. I had no words, only heat crawling up my neck and down my spine. I wanted to walk up to the screen, yank the slide projector out by its cord and say, "That was me. That was mine. That's the voice you're all clapping for." But I didn't. Instead, I headed toward the buffet table, where the mood was looser, more casual. That's when Sharon, one of our family's longtime friends, cornered me with a plate of shrimp cocktail in one hand. "You must be so proud of your brother," she chirped. "I heard you left the army early?" I blinked. "I did 5 tours, Sharon." She smiled politely, unsure if I was correcting her or confessing. "Ah," she said. "Well, still, it's good to see you here. Everyone was wondering if you'd show up." I clenched my jaw until my teeth ached. Wouldn't miss it. Across the room, my sister-in-law leaned into a circle of relatives. As I approached, their conversation morphed into the weather, the economy, safe ground. Still figuring things out, huh? She said to me with that glazed, sugary tone. Bet it's hard switching from combat to civilian life. I smiled. Not really, just different kinds of battles. She laughed, unsure if I was joking. I stood there a moment longer, letting the emptiness settle. Then I turned and left. Out in the parking lot, dusk had started to swallow the corners of the sky. The wind carried the salt of the nearby bay. I walked to my car, still hearing their voices inside the hall, even though I had closed the door behind me. I popped the trunk. Inside, tucked between a spare tire and a folded blanket, was a small black box. I ran my hand over the lid. They erased me from their story. Now, I'll write the ending. The soft glow from the streetlight filtered through my windshield, casting long shadows across the dashboard. I sat motionless, hands resting on the black box in my lap. When I flipped open the lid, it wasn't just military keepsakes I uncovered, it was a reminder of the person I used to be. The metals gleamed dully in the light, each one whispering a memory. Tucked beneath them was an old letter, its edges frayed, the ink slightly smudged. I hadn't read it in years. There, in the dark, I wasn't Odessa the forgotten sister. I was Lieutenant Odessa Warren, Communications Intel, 312th Tactical Signal Unit, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself remember who I'd been without them. I could still hear the rattle of the desert wind against the barracks wall, feel the sting of sand under my eyelids after a 14-hour recon shift. We weren't family by blood, but those men and women beside me had felt more like kin than anyone inside that event hall. We laughed over half-warm MREs, played poker with dirt-streaked cards, and patched each other up when things got rough. I remember the day Captain Alvarez called me into her office. She looked proud and somber, her voice low. I submitted your name for the Silver Star. I'd blinked, not knowing whether to feel honored or alarmed. But then she continued, Command says it won't go through unless someone makes calls back home. Pulls strings. Your father could… No. I'd said immediately. I don't want anything I didn't earn. So the medal didn't come. And I didn't regret it. Until tonight. When I saw Grady honored with stories he hadn't lived and speeches made from words I'd bled for. Beneath the medals was the letter from my mother, postmarked the summer of 2014. I remembered opening it under the brutal sun, grateful for a piece of home. But the warmth dissolved with the first line. Dear Odessa, I hope you're remembering your place. She wrote not of pride or love, but of comparison, of how Grady was making waves and how I should stop making life harder for myself by trying to prove something. Support him, she wrote. Don't compete. He's the future of this family. I hadn't cried then. I hadn't even reacted. I folded the letter back and shoved it into my pack. But tonight, under that quiet streetlight, I let the ache bloom. My mother didn't know that on the day I read her words, I had just returned from a mission that left one of my squad mates in pieces. I had needed comfort. I had received command. And the worst part? That letter wasn't the only silence. After we lost Parker in an IED blast, I'd tried to call home just to hear someone's voice. I left a voicemail, long, unfiltered. I told my father about the fear, the guilt, how I couldn't stop smelling burnt canvas. He never called back. Months later, my cousin Jess told me, offhandedly, that my dad said he never got the message. Jess said she'd seen him delete it, assuming it was just another guilt trip from Odessa. I exhaled slowly, gripping the steering wheel like it could ground me. What kind of family deletes their child's plea for comfort? What kind of father pretends not to know? My phone buzzed, an alert about the ceremony after party. I opened the invitation email again. My name was nowhere, just guest. My thumb hovered over the trash icon, but I didn't press it. Instead, I went into my archived contacts and tapped out a message to Captain Alvarez. Ma'am, it's Warren. I need a favor. Not for recognition. Strategy. I'm attending a family event this weekend. Could use a little backup. I stared at the message, then hit send. They'd built a narrative around Grady, a golden boy wrapped in borrowed glory, and erased me from their story. If they wanted a perfect ending for their fairy tale, they shouldn't have invited the ghost. I slid the black box back into the trunk, not to hide it, but to protect what it meant. I wasn't finished yet, and neither was the truth. If they need a spectacle, I said aloud, the night air cold against my throat, I'll give them one. But on my terms. The sky outside my hotel balcony was painted in streaks of soft orange and smoky lavender, like a battlefield right before dawn. I hadn't slept, not really, just skimmed one document after another, letting them pile across the small desk until the paper looked like armor. Somewhere beneath it all was the proof I needed. Not for them, for me. Time to make things clear, I said aloud, as if saying it gave me permission to rise. The breakfast buffet downstairs buzzed with the soft hum of post-ceremony chatter. Families gathered at round tables, laughter cutting through clinks of silverware. I spotted Zinnia first, back straight, coffee cup balanced between sculpted fingers. Grady sat beside her, scrolling through his phone like the world owed him its attention. Their entourage, as always, smiled too wide and listened too hard. I walked over calmly, the scent of overcooked bacon trailing behind me. "Morning," I said, placing a folded paper between their plates like a calling card. Zinnia raised a perfectly plucked brow. Grady didn't bother looking up. Their mother, seated beside them, locked eyes with me, her expression as unreadable as stone. Zinnia opened the paper, her lips curled. "This is a deed clause?" "It's a financial appendix," I replied. "It shows my name on the venue's founding payment, legally tied." Grady shrugged. "Paperwork doesn't prove much. People donate all the time. And some people take," I said, my voice level. They didn't argue. They didn't need to. The dismissal was louder than any word they could have thrown back, but this time, it didn't silence me. It steadied me. I remembered the exact room I was in when I wired the down payment from Germany. The clunky satellite phone, the beige tile that never stayed clean, the way I huddled over my cot and told myself this would finally bring us together. I even skipped a flight to Rome with my squad to make the call on time. Back then, Grady's startup had just failed. He was spiraling, drunk calls in the middle of the night, rants about destiny and failure. I'd thought a second chance was what he needed, so I wired him my deployment bonus. No questions, just hope. He never paid it back. He never even acknowledged it. And now, that very venue, that very celebration built on my quiet sacrifices, was pretending I didn't exist. Regret didn't burn anymore. It froze. This was never forgetfulness. This was erasure. The hallway outside the event space was lined with photos, sepia-toned snapshots of a family that looked a lot like mine, just without me. I waited there until I saw her. "Mom," I said. She turned. Vera looked older than I remembered, but not softer. Her pearls sat like armor on her collarbone. "You never mention me," I said quietly. "Not to people, not even in bios." "Am I really that shameful?" Her eyes narrowed slightly, and for a moment I thought she might soften, but she didn't. "You chose a life that was not feminine, not family-oriented," she said. "You made yourself hard to love, Odessa." "I didn't do that." Each word landed like gravel in my chest. "I served. I protected." "And no one asked you to," she replied. There it was, cold, crystallized truth. Holden was already seated when I arrived at the cafe. A good man, a little rounder around the middle than when I'd last seen him, but his handshake was still firm. "Everything looks clean," he said, scanning the papers. "You still want to go forward with this?" "They denied me a speaking slot." "Again," I said. His jaw tightened. "Then it's time they hear you anyway." We discussed security, rights to the space, timing. I wasn't doing this for vengeance. I was doing it to reclaim a voice that had been reduced to background noise. Back in the hotel, I watched my reflection in the elevator mirror. The uniform was still crisp, the metals catching light. "They crossed the line," I whispered. "I'll be the one drawing the next." When I opened my laptop, I began to type. A new invitation, a different guest list, and this time it would be my name in bold. The dress uniform lay next to me on the back seat, pressed and folded with the kind of care I used to give my letters home, back when I still thought they'd be read. I tapped my screen, rereading the email draft one last time. No bitterness, no pleas, just facts and legal leverage. Then I hit send. I sat back in the rented car, engine off, breathing in the stale scent of coffee and dry-cleaned fabric. The email was addressed to the event coordinator, a request, no, a demand, for a 5-minute speaking slot at the banquet tonight. I signed off not as Grady's sister, but as Odessa Wren, co-financier of the venue. It was time someone used that name the way it was meant to be used. I didn't have to wait long. The reply came in 15 minutes later. Short, curt, confirmed. I smirked. That's the thing about legal paperwork. People don't ignore it the way they ignore you. The pre-banquet gathering was already in full swing when I stepped into the lobby of the Hyatt ballroom. Laughter swelled and receded like ocean waves. But the moment I entered, I felt the current shift. Conversations turned choppy, fragments catching my ear. She always was difficult. I mean, who doesn't want a family of their own? The military's fine, but at some point, a woman's gotta... And then, clear as day, my aunt's voice, dripping honey and venom. She went rogue a long time ago. Can't expect warmth from someone who doesn't know how to build a home. I didn't flinch. I didn't confront her. I simply walked past, letting her perfume and poison settle behind me like dust. These people were architects of invisible walls, masters of polite cruelty. I used to try so hard to make it through those walls. Not tonight. My phone buzzed as I reached the outer corridor. Unknown number. Voicemail. I pressed play. "Hey, it's Jamie." His voice was grainy but familiar, like boots on gravel. "Just landed in Charleston. Thought I'd surprise you, but I guess you beat me to it. I saw the guest list change. Good. You deserve this, every damn second. Stand tall. I've got your 6. I stood there, clutching my phone like a lifeline. Jamie hadn't called me in months. We'd drifted after retirement, each pulled into different orbits of post-service life, but he remembered, he knew, and somehow he was here. That voicemail did more than steady my nerves. It reminded me why I'd worn the uniform in the first place. Not for my family, not even for the recognition, but for people who stood with you in the fire and remembered your name after the smoke cleared. The banquet hall was dimmed, chandeliers glittering like nervous stars. A smooth-voiced announcer listed sponsors, board members, honorees. My name wasn't mentioned until the very end, tacked on like an afterthought. And now, a few words from Miss Odessa Wren. No title, no rank. Just a name that, until now, none of them had spoken out loud. I walked to the stage in full dress uniform, ribbons polished, boots silent on the carpeted floor. The mic was too low. I adjusted it. "My name is Odessa Wren," I began, voice clear, hands steady. "You may know me as Grady's younger sister. Some of you may not know me at all. That's all right. Let me reintroduce myself." Gasps were audible. The shift in energy wasn't subtle. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I told the truth. I served 15 years in the United States Army, most recently in communications intelligence. My last deployment, I was in a black site monitoring encrypted foreign networks while this very banquet hall was being booked. I wired part of the down payment from a tent in the desert. Silence. I've never asked for applause, and I'm not asking for it now, but I won't stay silent while my story is rewritten or erased. I looked directly at Grady. Stories matter. Who tells them matters even more. Then I smiled, but it wasn't soft. It was steel wrapped in velvet. To the soldiers in this room, and to those who've supported one without needing credit, thank you. I walked off stage before they could clap out of obligation. And that's when I saw her, Grady's boss, making a beeline toward me, curiosity sharpened into something more serious. "We should talk," she said. Before I could reply, I noticed another figure moving toward me. My father. He wasn't smiling. Finally, they'd heard my name, but this time, it wasn't theirs to speak. The applause had long faded, yet I could still feel its residue, uneasy and thin, clinging to my skin like the sweat of a storm that hadn't broken yet. I walked off stage with my back straight, each step echoing down the corridor as if trying to outpace the whispers still hanging in the air. I didn't get far. My father was waiting just beyond the curtains, arms crossed, mouth tight, eyes like flint. He didn't speak right away, which made it worse. Silence had always been his sharpest blade. Then it came. "You embarrassed the entire family tonight." His voice was low, even, like a man reciting a weather report, cold front coming in. "You're upset because I told the truth," I replied, not flinching. He stepped closer. "This was supposed to be Grady's night, not your crusade." "And yet," I said, "you seem more concerned about appearances than reality." He took a deep breath and leaned in. "You've crossed a line, Odessa. I won't have this family torn apart by your need for attention. Unless you issue a public apology, you'll be removed from the family trust." The words landed like cold metal. I stared at him for a long second, then simply said, "Then take it," and I walked past him. He didn't follow. Outside, the night had fallen thick and quiet, but not for long. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Zinnia had posted something cryptic but unmistakable. A photo of a shattered mirror with a caption. "Some people twist stories just to see themselves reflected as the victim. Sad." The likes were rolling in. I scrolled, numb. A few family friends had already messaged me, subtle in their concern. "Hey, saw the speech. Everything okay?" Or worse, "Did you mean to come off so harsh?" The social tide was shifting fast. I wasn't just being excluded anymore. I was being rewritten again. This time, not in whispers, but in code, in curated online smirks and vague subtweets. They were trying to erase me. Publicly. So I stopped scrolling and started dialing. It had been years, but Jamie's number still lived in my phone. He didn't pick up, but the voicemail beeped and I left one sentence. "Hey, if you're still in town, I could use a voice that remembers." Then I pulled open my laptop. The military journalist I once protected during a convoy in Basra now had a nationally syndicated column. I didn't want her to write anything, yet. I just uploaded documents into a shared folder with her name, financial records, deployment letters, screenshots from venue emails, even a recorded Zoom meeting, Grady's voice talking over mine, reassigning credit like it was air to be passed around. I sent the link with a message. "In case I disappear again." The next morning, I found Grady alone outside the venue entrance, pacing and checking his watch like someone waiting for applause. "Grady," I said. He turned. "You planning to upstage me again?" "I'd say we're past the stage part." He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Look, I know that story I told. Technically it was yours, but it landed better coming from me. That's just the truth." He actually believed that. "You knew it was mine," I said, stepping closer. "You knew, and you said it anyway." He shrugged. "People needed a good story. I gave it to them." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't carelessness. It was entitlement, polished into performance. "Then let me show you how it lands when truth speaks louder," I said. I didn't wait for him to respond. Back in my room, I opened my email and finalized the invitation. It was subtle, clean, sent only to the military families in attendance, the journalist, and a few others who'd noticed the cracks in the story. A morning after event, my event, a quiet gathering, open to the public, held at the Veterans Memorial Park. No stage, no catered buffet. Just the names of those who served, unedited. They wanted silence, I whispered to myself. I'll give them an echo they can't outrun. I didn't notice the red flag at first. When the email from the venue arrived with a subject line that simply read, update on booking. I thought it might be a reminder or a detail about parking. Instead, it was a cancellation. "We regret to inform you," it began in that polished, impersonal tone meant to soften a blow while delivering it straight to the gut, "that due to unforeseen maintenance concerns, the venue will be unavailable for your scheduled event." I stared at the screen. No apology, no alternative, just a sudden erasure. Within the hour, I was parked outside the venue. The front entrance looked pristine, windows gleaming, staff inside moving furniture like it was just another Wednesday. I approached the manager, who flinched when he saw me in uniform. He wouldn't meet my eye. "It's not about the building," I said, folding my arms. "Is it?" He sighed. "Someone from your family expressed concern, said there might be, disruptions. Define disruptions. Legal complications, emotional outbursts, reputational issues," he muttered. There it was. The sabotage had begun, and this time they weren't even subtle about it. I walked away without another word, hands clenched so tight I felt my nails bite into my palm. They wanted to shut me down before I even stood up, but all they'd done was confirm how terrified they were of what I had to say. That night, my car was broken into. The glove box hung open, the contents scattered. Nothing was taken, except my illusion of privacy. In the driver's seat lay a single photo printed from what looked like an old surveillance camera. It was Jamie and me, sitting on a bench outside base housing years ago, laughing. I stared at it, heart suddenly still. It wasn't just about shunning me now. Someone was watching, and they wanted me to know. I called Jamie immediately. "I got something too," he said grimly. "A message. No return address. Just the word traitor and your name." We agreed to meet. When he showed up at my hotel door, his face was tired but determined. "There's something I never told you," he said, settling into the armchair like he needed to unload more than one truth. "Back when I was visiting home, Grady cornered me, tried to convince me not to get back in touch with you." I blinked. "Why?" "He said you were unstable, that reconnecting would only drag me down." My throat tightened, not from surprise, but from recognition. That was Grady, always the charming savior in public, always pulling levers in the dark. Jamie's voice softened. "I think he knew something even then. He knew that if someone like me, someone who knew the truth, stood beside you, people would start asking the right questions." I nodded slowly. The betrayal cut deep, but the clarity felt strangely empowering. If they were trying this hard to keep me silent, it meant they feared what I might say more than I'd feared saying it. I opened my laptop and pulled up the draft video I'd started scripting. This wasn't going to be a takedown. It was going to be a reckoning. I sat under the desk lamp's soft glow and pressed record. "My name is Odessa," I began, steady and low. "And this is not a story about revenge. It's a story about truth, and what happens when people try to bury it under comfort and control." I spoke of service, not just mine, but the collective sacrifices of people like Jamie, like those we'd lost. I talked about legacy and who gets to define it. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. When the video finished uploading, I scheduled the release for sunrise. Then I checked my inbox. That's when I saw it. A new video was spreading through social media, a heavily edited clip from my banquet speech. Chopped, re-spliced, manipulated to make me sound bitter, vindictive. Overlaid with music that made it seem like a petty outburst instead of the controlled stand it was. My face, contorted mid-sentence, my voice, twisted into caricature. They'd tried to turn me into their villain. I stared at the screen, pulse thudding in my ears. "So they want a war?" I whispered, a fire settling into my bones. "Good." I closed the laptop with finality. They've finally chosen the wrong soldier. I watched the view count on the distorted video climb like it had wings. Thousands. Tens of thousands. Strangers' faces reacting with emoji-splattered judgment, buying into the fiction crafted from my own words twisted against me. Each frame was a lie given weight by silence. I didn't sleep the night it went viral. Not because of fear, but because I knew what it meant. They weren't done trying to bury me, and this time, they brought a shovel big enough for the world to watch. Grady's text came the next morning. Family dinner tomorrow. Let's clear the air before Mom's surgery. It was a calculated olive branch. Too carefully timed to be sincere. But I went. Not because I believed in healing, but because I was done running. The old house hadn't changed. The scent of lemon polish and disappointment still hung in the walls. Vera sat in her recliner, thinner now, an oxygen line curled beneath her nose. Her eyes softened when she saw me, but said nothing. That was our language. Silence with punctuation marks of disapproval. Grady opened with a toast. To family, what endures? I sat across from him, arms crossed, nodding like I'd heard a sermon before. Zinnia kept her smile thin and tight, like a thread straining to hold back satisfaction. Then it happened. Wyatt, my cousin, the same boy who once cried when I protected him from a bully in 2nd grade, said, "Oops," and tapped the remote. The big screen TV blinked alive. And there I was, my speech edited and skewed, playing for the room. Murmurs rippled. Someone chuckled. Aunt Meredith whispered something about ungrateful theatrics. Grady didn't stop the video. He leaned back and watched. My niece, Lila, Grady's daughter, looked at me with wide eyes. Why would you say all that? Do you hate us that much? It cracked something in me, not rage, not shame, just clarity. I stood, slow and steady. No raised voice, just steel. You want truth? I said, walking to the center of the room. Here's a memory you didn't edit. I pulled out my phone and tapped play. My voice came through the speaker, softer, younger, shaky from the desert winds of Afghanistan. Hi, Mom, it's me. I know you're worried, but I'm okay. I wanted to say I'm proud of Grady getting that promotion. Just, please don't believe everything he says about me. I'm still your daughter. I'm still fighting for you, even if it's from here. The room went still. Then another voice, her voice, came next, in the recording from her old voicemail box, which I'd salvaged from a dusty USB drive. Grady told me you were unstable. I'm tired, Odessa. Just stop making it harder. Gasps. Vera blinked rapidly, her face crumbling. I turned to Grady. You didn't protect Mom. You protected your image. He stood up, jaw locked. You want to destroy everything over old wounds? No, I said. I want to stop bleeding for people who hand me the knife. Nobody moved as I left. Not even Vera. Outside, I exhaled into the dusk like shedding skin. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Jamie. You need to see this, he said. The story's going national. Local news picked it up. People are talking. Another buzz. A message from a journalist. I believe you. Let's talk. I stared at the screen, the shadows of my reflection warped against the glass. Maybe the truth didn't scream. Maybe it didn't beg. It just waited. And finally, someone was ready to hear it. The night air had a way of slicing through pretense. Sharp, honest, uninvited. I leaned against the side of my car, phone still in my hand, Dana's message open on the screen. I believe you. Let's talk. Just 5 words, but they landed like a hand extended across the abyss. For a moment, I just breathed. My chest rose and fell, not in peace, but with the weight of what I'd just set ablaze. I had cracked open a carefully constructed family portrait, and now the pieces lay splintered at our feet. The buzz of my phone startled me. A notification. Then another. The video from the family gathering, the one where I exposed Grady's lies, had gone viral. I opened the clip. There I was, calm but unyielding, speaking truth into a room that had been built on silence. The comments, though, were a battlefield. Some called me a hero, others labeled me ungrateful, bitter, divisive. Why would you embarrass your family like that? One wrote. This isn't bravery, it's betrayal, said another. And then, thank you for saying what so many of us couldn't. I closed the app, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from the cold blade of realization. You can't control the story once it's out. And Grady? He struck fast. An hour later, a video of him appeared on my feed. He was in his living room, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled up, eyes rehearsed. "I never thought I'd have to defend myself from my own sister," he began. "We all go through tough times, but there's a way to handle it, with grace, with family." He paused as if to mourn the destruction I had caused. "I love Odessa, I always have, but this isn't her, this is pain talking." He knew exactly how to turn the tide, paint me as broken, not dishonest, just unwell. I watched in silence, each word tightening the knot in my chest. It was a move I should have expected. But still, it hit harder than I let myself admit. And then, the call came. "Miss Odessa," the voice was clinical. "Your mother has been admitted to Charleston Memorial. She collapsed earlier this evening." My fingers went numb. What happened? "She's stable now, but you weren't listed on her emergency contact. I found your name through an old file." I barely heard the rest, just the rush of old fears crashing into the present. I was out the door before the call even ended. At the hospital, they made me wait in the lobby. I could see Grady through the glass doors of the ICU, standing by Mom's bedside. When I approached, the nurse stopped me. "She's not accepting visitors beyond immediate family." "I am immediate family." "I'm sorry, your name was removed from the list." Removed. I turned to see Grady watching me, arms crossed. "This isn't the time for more drama, Odessa," he said. "She needs rest, not more chaos." "You erased me from her room," I hissed. "Just like you erased me from everything else." His expression didn't flinch. "This is about Mom, not your ego." I walked away before I did something I couldn't take back. In the hallway, I sat on a bench and buried my face in my hands. A flash of memory came, me at 12, holding a bowl of soup to Mom's lips while Grady was off chasing trophies. I had been there. I was there. My phone buzzed again. "I'm outside," Dana's text read. She met me in the parking lot, a worn leather folder tucked under her arm. She didn't smile. "Are you ready for this?" I nodded. She handed me the folder. Inside were financial statements, copies of wire transfers, legal memos. Grady had been moving money from Mom's accounts for months, small sums, masked as payments for medical supplies and home care staff that didn't exist. "Some of these accounts are in your name, Odessa," she said quietly. "He forged your authorization." The breath left my lungs. "You're saying I could go down with him?" "If you stay silent, yes. But if you speak first." She didn't need to finish. I stared at the documents, my fingers running over the ink. So this is what it meant to hold the truth in your hands. It didn't feel like power. It felt like responsibility. "I don't want revenge," I whispered. "I just want to stop disappearing." Dana watched me, her voice even. "Then tell your story. All of it." I didn't answer right away. That night, I sat in my hotel room, letters from my mother spread across the bed, years of her slanted cursive, hopeful lines that once made me feel like I still mattered. "I miss you, oh. The house feels too quiet. Tell me when you'll be home next. I made that soup you like. I showed your photo to the nurse today. She said you look strong." A lump formed in my throat. I picked up my phone and called Dana. "Let's tell the truth," I said. "All of it." She was quiet for a second. Then you'll need to see this first." The evidence sat between us like a truce negotiated at gunpoint, cold, heavy, undeniable. Dana slid the USB drive across the polished conference table in her office. My hands shook as I picked it up, the metal chilly against my skin. "Just hear it," she said quietly, turning off the overhead light so the room felt smaller. "Let's start with your mother's voice." I plugged the drive into my laptop and pressed play. Their mother's faint voice came first, ragged but awake enough. "I wish Odessa were here, but Grady says I can't trust her anymore." The words echoed in the dark. It was her fear made audible, years of doubt planted in her head, nurtured through omission and manipulation. Then came the financial records, wire transfers, account reconciliations, forged signatures. Every transaction traced back to Grady. Every one disguised as care for Mom. They took everything, I whispered. Her money, her right to choose, even my place in her life. Dana didn't flinch. This is beyond family drama, she said. This is elder financial abuse, and we can bring it to the DA. I stared at the screen, the lines of my mother's voice reverberating in the background. I saw the creases in her face, how she crumbled under stress. I saw the child I once was, just trying to be seen, and now I had the proof. I didn't say yes immediately. I wanted to say no, pretend I didn't care about the world these documents exposed. But inside, something roared. Dana made me a call to a pro bono attorney specializing in elder law. She was a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes and almost sharper principles. You understand, she said when we met, that this will tear through your family, not just raise questions. I nodded. I do, I said, but my mother's voice isn't negotiable. Family members arrived. Aunts, cousins, aunts again, because the word family felt overused in that moment. I asked them to join in the family room, just like old times, but this time I held the mic. A shaky silence followed me as I returned with my laptop. This is not about breaking someone, I began. It's about stopping brokenness that's been allowed to continue. I played the voicemail, my mother hearing Grady's words. The room went still, even the air seemed to hold its breath. Then another layer, Aunt Josie, voice wavering. I always wondered why he handled everything, but I didn't speak up. I was afraid. Fear. It had built walls stronger than any lie. Before Grady could step in, I pressed play on the audio of him, caught on a hidden recording. She was never supposed to find that. His betrayal materialized in his own words, echoing around them. Grady's face paled. No excuses came out, just silence. Dana stepped forward. We can release this through a public statement, a press brief. You lead. We control the narrative. Some relatives stepped forward offering apologies. Others closed rank, refusing to believe. My phone buzzed. A voice. We need you to come in. Now. The DA's office. I exhaled. This was bigger than me. I looked around the uneven circle of relatives. My mother was always the center of us, I said quietly, glancing at her photo on the mantel, eyes full of love, not lies. I want her back. And I was ready to fight. The elevator's hum was the only sound cutting through the silence. Dana stood beside me, her calm presence grounding the nerves that twisted inside my chest like wires pulled too tight. The Army JAG officer, Colonel Reeves, walked just a step ahead, his posture rigid, composed. The way I used to carry myself in full uniform. The kind of composure I'd learned to wear like armor. But nothing about this moment felt like the battlefield I'd trained for. This was something deeper, a different kind of reckoning. The district attorney's office was tucked behind a pair of reinforced glass doors, sterile and quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like your footsteps are too loud. We were escorted into a neutral conference room, wood-paneled, plain, with a faint smell of old coffee and paper. The DA, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a steady voice, greeted me like someone who knew they were about to ask questions that mattered, not to catch me in a lie, but to understand the truth I'd lived through. Miss Whitmore, thank you for coming. Odessa is fine, I replied. My voice didn't shake, though my hands were tight in my lap under the table. For over an hour, I walked them through the details, the payments I made from Germany, the recorded conversations, the years of estrangement engineered through whispers. They didn't interrupt, they just listened, and when they did ask questions, they were thoughtful, surgical. Then came the moment I didn't expect. We appreciate your candor, the DA said, folding her hands. We have reason to believe Grady Whitmore is also under investigation for financial exploitation involving another elderly person, a close family friend. This isn't isolated. I felt my breath hitch. It wasn't just me. He'd done this before. My stomach clenched, not because I was surprised, but because I'd hoped I was the only one, that my silence hadn't enabled him to hurt anyone else. Dana leaned forward and slid over a new file. We recovered one more recording, she said quietly. In it, my mother's voice, weak and breathless during a hospital visit, whispered, I'm afraid of my own son. That broke something in me I hadn't realized was still whole. Colonel Reeves was the one who confirmed what I already knew but hadn't voiced. Your mother was coerced into revoking your power of attorney. It's legally questionable, especially given her condition at the time. So he hadn't just tried to erase me, he'd made sure I couldn't protect her, either. By the time we left the DA's office, I felt like I'd walked out of something heavier than war. Not bloodshed, not explosions, but the quiet kind of violence. Betrayal served over years in small, deliberate bites. The public unraveling began the next morning. The local news station ran a segment, respectful, direct, and damning. They used blurred audio, softened images, but the message was clear. A son with influence, a mother with declining cognition, and a sister who refused to stay quiet. Grady's company took an immediate hit. Sponsors pulled out. A longtime business partner made a statement distancing themselves. But the real twist came through a voicemail Dana played for me late that afternoon. A whistleblower from inside Grady's office had come forward, with internal documents, forged signatures, and a timeline that matched every lie I'd long suspected. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. I didn't touch my dinner, just sat with the old recorder still clutched in my palm, my mother's voice playing over and over. I wish Odessa was here, but Grady says I can't trust her anymore. I remembered being 13 and sitting at the edge of her bed while she cried over a fight with my father. I'd wiped her cheeks with my sleeve. Back then, she called me her quiet little soldier, the one she could count on to be strong. I wrote her a letter, not to send, just to get it out of me. Dear Mom, I was never trying to replace him. I just wanted to be seen. You used to braid my hair and tell me I was fierce. Somewhere along the way that scared you. I'm sorry if my strength ever made you feel small. But I never stopped loving you, even when you stopped looking for me. Love, Odessa. I folded it, walked out onto my balcony, and lit a match. The paper curled inward, flames eating the ink line by line until only ash remained. I watched it drift into the wind, then whispered into the night. She was afraid of her own son, and I had to live with that. The morning was still. That kind of stillness that felt earned. No sirens, no emails, no distant murmurs of crisis unfolding. Just the sound of wind slipping through the old oak outside my apartment. I stood by the window holding a thick white envelope. On the back was the DA's seal. Inside, final documentation of the charges filed against Grady. Elder abuse, financial fraud, obstruction. But what caught my breath wasn't the paperwork. It was the yellow sticky note tucked inside, handwritten, "You were right to come forward." I closed my eyes and let the silence sit with me like an old friend. News broke 2 hours later. And there he was, Grady Whitmore, in grainy footage, wearing a navy blazer, being escorted out of his office by 2 officers. Cameras caught every angle. The man once praised as a pillar of the Charleston community now looked exactly like what he was, exposed. The charges were listed on every major station. Dana had played her cards with precision. My mother's name was cleared, not just in private, but in print. Her photo, once manipulated to support Grady's campaigns, now ran alongside headlines calling her a victim of familial coercion. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just watched. Then turned the TV off. Aunt Jo called that evening, voice trembling. Odessa, I'm sorry. We were so wrong. Should have said something sooner. Some relatives messaged quietly. A few defended Grady still, claiming this was too much and family shouldn't be dragged through courts. I sent a single email back. I am done seeking belonging in places that cost me my sanity. Odessa. Dana reached out moments later. She'd received one last file from the whistleblower. A signed plan by Grady to transfer our mother to a private care facility overseas. No oversight, no return, no voice. She'd have disappeared, just like I almost did. The next morning, I visited the nursing home. My mother was having a lucid day. Her eyes followed me as I sat beside her and pulled the DA's letter from my bag. I read every line aloud, voice steady. When I finished, she reached for my hand. Her fingers, frail but firm, closed around mine. "You saved me," she whispered. I blinked hard, then leaned in and kissed her temple. Later that week, I filed for conservatorship. Grady didn't contest. No one did. Within a month, I liquidated every asset tied to the Whitmore inheritance. I could have kept it. I'd earned that right, but I didn't want blood money. Instead, I created a nonprofit, the Vera Fund, dedicated to helping elder abuse survivors find safety and voice. It launched quietly, but Dana insisted on writing the press release. One final thing remained. I sat on my balcony again, night falling gently around me. The air smelled like rain and redemption. In my hands was a letter, addressed to Grady. I didn't write it to forgive. I wrote it to cut the final thread. "You no longer live in my mind rent-free," I wrote. "You taught me that silence can be louder than screams. I've stopped being silent. I've stopped being yours." I struck a match. The letter curled and blackened, just like the one I'd written to our mother. And like that one, it disappeared into ash, into wind. I stood there a moment longer, then I turned and whispered, "I choose peace." Flash forward. A year later, I stood on a stage in full dress uniform, but not for a funeral, not for war. This was a community service award, recognition for the Vera Fund's early success. Dana sat in the audience, clapping hard. Jamie, too, nodding proudly. I took the mic and spoke briefly, simply. When I stepped back, applause filled the room. Sometimes, I said to myself, justice isn't loud. Sometimes it's just finally sleeping through the night. I've learned something through all this. Silence can be its own kind of betrayal, but breaking it, no matter how late, is an act of self-respect. You can love your family and still hold them accountable. You can fight for the truth and still carry grace. For anyone watching this who has ever been pushed aside, told to keep the peace, or made to question your own memories, let me say this clearly. You are not invisible. You are not too much. You are not alone. Sometimes justice doesn't show up in a courtroom or a headline. Sometimes it's in the quiet decision to reclaim your voice, your story, your name. And if you're standing at that edge right now, torn between staying silent or stepping forward, let this be your sign. Speak. What would you do if the truth cost you your family? Would you pay it? Would you fight for it? Or walk away in peace? Let me know in the comments. And if this story moved you, drop a 1 below, or tell me where you're watching from. If you didn't like it, tell me why. I'm here to listen too. And hey, if you want more stories like this, real, raw, and rooted in something deeper, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Your voice matters here, just like mine finally did.